So let's introduce our experts and our special guest. If you've joined our webinars before, you may already know Katie Tamony. Katie's official title is Chief Marketing Officer at Monrovia, but she really fills the role of storyteller and trend spotter. Katie has more than 25 years of expertise in lifestyle and leisure industries, and she is a longtime avid gardener with specific interests in the intersections of garden, art, health, and well-being. Hi, Katie.
Hello, good to be here.
I'd also like you to meet Georgia Clay. Georgia is the plant selections manager at Monrovia, which means she is our go-to expert for anything plants. In her role at Monrovia, she works with breeders and plant finders from around the world to bring new plants to market. Hi, Georgia.
Hi, Kathleen.
I'm excited to introduce you to today's special guest, Madeline Hooper. Madeline is a lifelong gardener who has served as a trustee of the Brooklyn Botanic Garden and the Berkshire Botanical Garden. After spending many decades gardening and suffering the aches and pains that come with it, Madeline found a solution by learning how to properly move her body to prevent strain and stress. As creator and host of the PBS television show GardenFit, she travels around the country sharing those solutions and helping other gardeners stay fit and ready to enjoy this passion that we all love for years to come. Thanks for being here, Madeline.
Delighted to be with you.
With
And
that,
I was just going to say, it looks like Madeline, your camera is off. If you want to start your video,
For some reason,
so we can see you.
it says unable to video.
Huh.
Let's see. We will see if we can do that here.
Oh,
There we go.
Oh, hi.
Perfect.
Good. That is
Great.
perfect. Well, good to see you, Madeline. And with that, Katie, let's take it away.
Thank you. Thanks, Kathleen. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We're excited to have Madeline here because ever since she and I started talking at the end of last year about the connection between, how you feel in the garden and taking care of your body as you garden, how important that is to Monrovia as we think about Grow Beautifully and what that means. So delighted to have you here, Madeline. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to be with you.
Okay, let's begin. First, we always start with a little poll, as Kathleen mentioned. We want to know what you're planning to do this spring and summer, areas in the garden that you want to refresh and renovate. So maybe number one, you're thinking about updating, your front yard, maybe just, refreshing porch containers, or maybe you're thinking something a little more ambitious, creating more spaces for outdoor living in the backyard space, seating areas, entertaining, or perhaps you're interested in just refreshing those borders and beds. You're looking for some quick, ways to add new color, new plants. So the poll is off and running, and I can't share what I can see on my screen because of the technical issues of sharing the presentation, but it looks like refreshing borders and beds is really what a lot of you have in mind. So we're definitely going to talk about great things to add there. Yeah, it looks like we've got, more than 3/4 of you have told us what your plans are. So 55% of you say you're going to refresh borders and beds. 30% want to update the front yard and redo your porch containers. And about, 18-20% are those more ambitious, planners. Well, good for you. And hopefully you get ideas throughout this episode that you can incorporate in whatever your projects are. But whatever your projects are this spring, one of the things that Madeline and I have been talking about is how gardening is, not just projects and chores, but you've said, Madeline, it's really an experience.
It is. And
Yeah.
I think when you think about refreshing your beds in any capacity or just starting a new season, you kind of want to refresh your knowledge about everything that you're doing in the garden, including how to use your body correctly.
Mhm.
That's a great opportunity to start learning some special ways of taking away stress from your
Yeah.
body and enjoying your gardening more.
So we're going to get into that, and we're going to, we're going to talk about some front yard ideas that you can absolutely incorporate into the backyard as well, or any space that you have in mind. But we had heard from our research with gardeners across the country that they were most interested in front yard projects and containers, long-lasting containers, especially for summer. And then in color trends, we're going to talk about some color trends particularly relevant for summer, and then have Madeline share some tips for moving well in the garden and really taking care of yourself as you do these projects. So the first idea that I'd like to jump into are some of the key design trends, the front yard ideas we're talking about. And we've mentioned this before in a previous webinar, kind of this move toward what we think of as the modern meadow or the city meadow. There you are in more of a smaller space, but you want a meadow kind of look. And this is actually Georgia's front yard that we're looking at here on the left. These are the before photos, and the right is the design plan that we've been working on with Georgia to bring that meadow feeling to the front yard, reduce the lawn or get rid of it, add some grasses that really capture, the breeze, have a more natural look. Georgia, tell us what you love about this trend.
Yeah, well, I chose it, so I love this trend. I love the movement that you just alluded to, Katie. It feels very soothing with that matrix of grasses. I also love, I'm sort of a plant nerd, so having the matrix of grasses allows you to really mix and match different perennials within that matrix and feel very cohesive. I also love the wildlife aspect. Of course, the grasses and the flowering perennials and shrubs attract a ton of pollinators and hummingbirds and other wildlife, and overall just feels very carefree and loose and alive, which I really love.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into the plants that kind of create that look that you've chosen. But first, I wanted to say this is a lot of plants. This is going to be a lot to plant. And Madeline, we've talked about one of the key things that people have to do during spring planting is dig, and George is going to be doing a lot of digging. Do you have a tip or a general idea, something to keep in mind about how, we can dig more effectively and take care of ourselves?
Absolutely. So I think the joy that we have, and you and I have talked about this, Katie, is that your body is your most important gardening tool. So why not use all of it? So when you're digging, if you really use your body weight, not only just, kicking the shovel, but placing it in a way where it can easily cut through your soil. So you're kind of holding it upright to make sure that the blade is actually going into the soil perpendicularly. So that way you really are also standing. You're not hunching over, and you can use your arms and your legs to really take a nice deep cut. And then eventually you can shape that hole according to what you think would be best for the plant that you're obviously going to put in there. But I think if you do it correctly, you end up making the hole large enough. The enthusiasm of feeling good about it really gets you to do the right type of gardening.
Yeah. And sort of being, like you said, being straight and putting your whole body like down on the blade of the shovel to get a good hole started is the best way to go. So let's look at plants, Georgia.
Yeah, so this is a snapshot of some of the plants that are involved in my plants specifically. The main one being Carly Rose fountain grass. Really love this grass. You can see it has that beautiful pinkish plume that lasts for a really long time. Dark green foliage, and it's a nice height for that modern. I live in the middle of a city, so 3 foot tall. It doesn't get overwhelmingly large, and it's also quite quick to establish, which we really like. And then next we have Kismet raspberry, which is a beautiful cone flower. Kismet raspberry was specifically selected for its extra large flowers and just large amount of flowers that it produces throughout the season. You can see it has that intense color. It also has sturdy stems, so you don't need to stake it, with really low effort, which is lovely. There was a study on pollinator visits that was done in the last few years on many, many different echinaceas, straight species and cultivars, and Kismet raspberry was actually one of the top 5 overall performers for pollinator visits. So it's a really excellent choice for the pollinator garden as well. And then next is an allium. It's called Bubble Bath. This is one of the newest alliums on the market. And while we were trialing it, it really stood out even before the blooms came on because it had this really interesting twisted foliage. It was very cool. And then it continued to impress in our trials because it bloomed early and it had this lovely, really unique light lavender flower to it. So quite a unique, quite a different allium there with Bubble Bath.
It's a great name too.
Yeah, definitely very fitting.
Mhm.
And then Belicious Pink Agastache. This is another brand new Agastache on the market. It has abundant blooms all throughout the summer and then all the way into the fall. You get this beautiful two-tone look with that deep, dark burgundy calyx and then that rosy pink flower. And the flowers are huge. They are ginormous and super fluffy. I absolutely love them. Agastache, also known as hummingbird mint, because it does attract a ton of hummingbirds as well. And then next is Steffi Dark Rose Gara. Gara is a fabulous plant for adding a little bit of whimsy and to the garden and also attracting pollinators. But typically it gets really big and really leggy. And so it tends to be in the background or not at all in the garden. But the Steffi series is much more compact. It's going to be, 1.5 to 2 feet inches at max. And the blooms are going to be right above the foliage. So you don't have to stake it. And as you can see, it's in my front yard. So it's a really great front yard plant that stays within its bounds. Very heat tolerant and again, blooming all throughout the summer. And then lastly, an evergreen hedge. It's called Gold Coast Pittosporum. I love Pittosporum as an evergreen hedge because it brings this really beautiful airy texture to the garden while still blocking views. So you get this really fast growing screen without feeling like you're walling off your neighbors or the street or the sidewalk. You get this really beautiful texture and it has a really nice dark black stem and then a lovely lime green tricolor foliage. Also, it gets about 10 feet tall in total.
Yeah, just really pretty choices here. And I can just see this catching the breeze as we talked about. Madeline, you had some tips too for when you're planning a whole new garden, like Georgia is, what to keep in mind, thinking about your body and how you're going to take care of it.
Exactly. So, of course, everybody plans to make sure that the plant selection, that each plant grows to the right size and has room to do that. And I think people should plan about having enough room to take care of those plants in that bed. And one tip that I'd like to suggest is I've used a stepping stone. And I put it throughout my beds, especially if it's a longer border or a deeper border. And it sounds like it might be unsightly, but all the plants grow over it, but it's there. So I think what's so nice about that is you can step and put your foot on something that's solid while you're either, deadheading or pruning or taking care of all the plants around you. So I think leaving space for yourself is important.
I like that, leaving space for yourself in the garden. So a second trend that's becoming ever more popular, the garden of abundance idea, where we're really getting more productivity and beauty and attracting pollinators and growing our own, edibles in our garden spaces. And it's moving to the front yard. So this idea of blending herbs and flowering shrubs with fruit like, strawberries and blueberries and fruit trees. The garden on the left is from Pine House Edible Gardens. And Leslie Bennett just specializes in this wonderful blend. I think the choices here for plants, we'll get into that, but one of the things, Madeline, that you've talked about and helped people on the TV show is just thinking about when you have fruit trees, how you're harvesting, how you're picking your fruit. Do you want to share a tip about that?
Absolutely. So whenever you're reaching high, which we all do for so many different reasons, I think it's really important that you remind yourself not to use your shoulders. You really want your back muscles, especially your shoulder blades, to be going down your back so your chest is raised and you really are just using your arms to stretch up. And that will save a lot of stress in your shoulders. And, you know, the other thing I think we talked about, Katie, about harvesting was to have a basket with you. So I really love the fact that if you find something or the perfect apple is hanging there, that you have a place to put it, that you can carry it with you. You don't have to put it down on the ground and pick it up again or come back and remember to find it. But the most important thing is to try to keep your shoulders down and back, and certainly not hunched up.
Does everybody feel like they're sitting up straighter listening to Madeline? I know I am. So Georgia, take us through the choices here.
Yeah, so there's lots of choices to be had in this category, but I chose first up Honey Babe, which is a miniature peach tree, a dwarf variety. It's really only going to be 5 to 6 feet tall, so perfect for these more modern, smaller gardens. You can really fit it into many spaces. I love it because in the spring, of course, you've got that beautiful bright pink flower, and then midsummer you get beautiful, sweet yellow peaches that are freestone, which means the flesh is not attached to it, so you can easily remove that pit. These will self-pollinate, but like most fruits, if you have 2, you'll get a bigger harvest. And it's a relatively low chill hour, so 400 hours or so for chill. And just a reminder, a chill hour is the number of hours spent below the temperature of 45 degrees in the winter, and a lot of fruit need chill hours to do that. And then next is a vine. This is Kiwi Magic. I'm showcasing the hardy kiwi, which is these really beautiful, small, smooth skin fruit. They're hardy all the way down to zone 4, which is quite fun. Kiwi Magic is both a male and a female vine planted into one container, so you don't have to worry about buying both, which is really handy. We also do grow the Chinensis type, or what you see in the grocery store, that fuzzy skin kiwi that's hardy to zone 7, 8 also. And then next is a blackberry. It's called Superlicious. This is a compact blackberry, getting about 3 to 4 feet tall and wide. It has thornless stems, which I really love. It makes it really easy to harvest. And they produce quite a large berry with wonderful flavor. And in most parts of the country, you're going to get 2 harvests in one season, which is fabulous. And then next is barbecue rosemary. Love adding herbs, especially perennial herbs, into the garden. There are many varieties to choose from, but I really like barbecue because it has these really nice straight stems. So if you're having a party and you want to use one as a skewer, it's a great to do that with. They're also fairly upright, so 4 to 6 feet tall by 2 to 3 feet wide. And I see them used a lot as a hedge, which is a really cool, interesting way to use this sort of plant. And then next is Bountiful Baby Blueberry. This is a super compact shrub. It's our newest Bountiful blueberry in the collection. It's going to be about 3 feet tall and wide and stays really quite round on its own without any intervention, which is really quite different than most blueberries that we see with a lot of rangy twigs here and there. In the fall and the winter, it has this beautiful, intense burgundy red foliage, and it does produce a lot of berries in the summer. So not only is it useful in an edible garden, but it's also ornamentally very beautiful, especially with that fall color. And then lastly is a rugosa rose. From an edible perspective, rugosas are known for producing the sweetest hips, which can be used for making jellies and sauces and syrups and things. And we see a lot of interest in that growing. What I love about our seaside swirl rugosas is that they stay naturally compact, right about 3 foot tall by 3 foot wide. Again, much different than what you typically see a rugosa, which get large and pretty rambling. These are very well behaved. They also have fabulous fragrance. So a beautiful fragrant rose, perfect for attracting pollinators to the garden as well, and great salt and sand tolerance. So if you're in a coastal area or area where road salt is used, this is a great rose for that.
And it's zone 3 hardy, so great find for that. And I love that the pink shade of this, not the red, but the pink, is this really beautiful lavender color. So look for that on our website. Bountiful Baby Blueberry, as George was saying, is such a beautiful landscaping plant. And that's something that we try to keep in mind as we choose our edible plants, is something that looks good, you know, all the time, even when it's not bearing fruit. Madeline, when we were talking about harvesting and keeping a basket with you, I was thinking about something else you've also shared with me, which is the importance of balance
Yes.
in the garden. Want to give that tip that we've talked about?
Love to, because I think this really helps everybody. Whenever you are carrying things all over the garden, and
Mhm.
just imagine if everybody imagines holding a very heavy watering can full of water, you can just feel how your body is sort of definitely not balanced. You're leaning. And
Yeah.
so I think really remember to carry two things, two
Mm,
plants, two
right.
watering cans, or a plant in a watering can. But really, it's so much more efficient for gardening, and it's much healthier to keep your whole body stacked in a nice balance.
Ever since you've told that to me, I keep that in mind as because I used to just pick up, one plant with my, right arm, and I realized, wow, I do lean to the side when I do that. So thank you for that tip.
I did that all the time. One other thing I just like to suggest, which is a hard habit to form in your mind, but if physically it's very easy to learn, and that's being ambidextrous. So if you're pulling a cart with one hand, just think about if you just changed hands, what
Mhm.
stress you would be saving one side of your body. And you can do that with clipping or digging. So I really
Mhm.
suggest that people get into this whole idea of balancing out how their body is used in their garden.
Yeah, it's great, great, thinking about um choosing to use the hand that you don't usually favor is a good tip. Um, so next trend, conversation spaces in the front yard. So not just reserving the seating area for the back, but really maybe it's having, two chairs like you see on the left here in a little corner of the garden. Maybe it's a swing where you can, read, enjoy people walking by. Or maybe, as the example in the middle shows, designer Mike Pyle actually turned half of his front yard over to this conversation area with a fire pit, to really, expand how he's using his whole yard. So some of the ways that you can, think about that in terms of plant choices are, using large foliage plants, grasses, things that sort of conjure up a really relaxing feeling around the seating area. And I think, having seating in the front yard or anywhere really in the garden is also could be a key benefit in terms of moving well, right, Madeline?
Definitely.
Yeah.
If I may add, I think that
Sure.
this idea of taking breaks,
Uh-huh.
if you really use one group of muscles for more than a half an hour, you're starting to stress them. So we
Mm.
all love to weed an entire bed, but it takes more usually than 20 minutes or 30
Uh-huh.
minutes to do that. So I suggest this, I love your idea of having spaces to sit all around your home, because you really can then take a break. But certainly if you don't have a place to sit down, you should definitely move from one chore to another. So spend 20 minutes or 30 minutes weeding, and then
Mm.
maybe 30 minutes pruning. And then when you go back to weeding, those muscles are all refreshed, and you're, again, much more efficient and can enjoy the process more, and it's less strain on your body.
It's a great tip. Okay, so if you're designing your conversation space, Georgia, now hopefully you've had some water.
I know. Story of my life these days with the toddler.
Plants.
So I chose really wonderful texture and foliage plants. The first being Ozakazuki Japanese maple.
Mhm.
This is a nice upright tree for texture and shade. It's going to be about 20 to 25 feet tall at max. So you're going to get that really nice dappled shade, maybe in a seating area. If you were to ask what's the best fall color in a Japanese maple, this might be it. It has this brilliant bright red fall color. So this time of year, you're going to get this beautiful green, large leaf palmatum that gives you the nice shade. But when the fall hits, you're going to be so glad that you planted Ozakazuki, because that fall color is just fabulous. And then I noticed in the chat, somebody was asking about dry shade and Himalayan sweet box. This is a fabulous dry shade plant. There's not a lot that can fit that box, and this really does. And it is evergreen. It's a ground cover, so 1 to 2 feet tall by about 8 feet wide. And it has fragrant flowers. The flowers are pretty insignificant visually, but they are heavily fragrant. And so you will smell the flowers more than you will visually enjoy them, but it's quite a beautiful plant, perfect for that shady seating area, perhaps underneath the Japanese maple tree. And then next is the Jurassic pterodactyl eared lady fern, or Anthurium otiphorum. This tends to stay lower. It gets about 18 inches tall, makes a wonderful background fern for texture. You get this beautiful red stem paired with a light green frond, and as they age, they get darker green. So you get this really beautiful multi-tone look on that really fabulous, of course, fern foliage. That's right behind Katie as well.
I'm a fan.
And then you mentioned grasses, and Jazz Little Blue Stem is one of the newest selections of Little Blue Stem. It was selected for its shorter stature. So it's going to be about 2 to 3 feet tall, and it stands upright without flopping over or lodging. The straight little blue stem tends to get really tall and then fall apart. So this is a much better landscape plant. It also has that beautiful blue foliage that takes on more of a purple hue in the fall. And then another fabulous plant for texture is this camouflage variegated Japanese Aralia. This is a beautiful evergreen plant with that yellow lime green camouflage leaf. Looks fabulous in a shady area to really brighten things up, or in a container. It can be brought inside as well as a houseplant if you're not quite as hardy as Zone 7. And then lastly is Redemption colocasia, or elephant ear. This is brand new, and you can see just how super unique this plant is. It has that huge glossy black foliage, and as it matures, it develops that hot pink center that just intensifies in the heat. So you get this really fabulous contrast, quite a statement, either edging in a pond or water garden, also really fabulous in containers.
And I think when you're thinking about your conversation area, think about, where your eye is going to go, and plan for a really eye-catching statement plant, either in a container or in the ground as part of that scene. Okay, so next trend that I want to talk about is what we call loose meets tamed, and this idea that that contrast between structure and then some more playful, colorful, sort of looser, cottagey feeling plants. That juxtaposition is so appealing. I think too, as people are incorporating more natives into their gardens, they do want to still have the complement of some structure, so that it doesn't just become a complete chaotic, hard to take care of mess. It's really nice to have that balance. We talk a lot about the importance of biodiversity in the garden. And this is part of that idea too, that you don't just want all of one thing. So take us through some of those plant choices, George, and then we'll talk to Madeline a bit about what that means in terms of the body, the loose meets tamed. So first let's talk about plants.
Yeah, so in your photos, obviously boxwood would be a really typical choice here, and a beautiful choice. So I went with some maybe alternative, something that would give you that same feel, but maybe isn't a boxwood. So the first up is Orangina vaccinium. This is vaccinium, you probably know blueberry, but sort of get that out of your head. This is a find from Dan Hinckley. So it's a really interesting evergreen shrub. It gets about 4 feet tall and 4 feet wide. And it has this gorgeous sunlit orangey yellow tip throughout the season. And then it takes on these really dramatic shades of red in the fall and winter. It's a beautiful rounded evergreen shrub. It doesn't produce a berry for you, so it really is all about that, that more refined shrub look in the garden. And then next is little one blue holly. This is a really fabulous compact female blue holly. It's only going to be about 3 to 4 feet tall and wide, with that beautiful glossy green foliage. And it does get a bright red berry throughout the winter. This is one of the only compact female blue hollies on the market. Most of them get much bigger than this 3 foot tall. And it was selected in the Midwest, so it's reliably hardy to Zone 5, which is wonderful. And you mentioned natives, and we do grow prairie dropseed, which is a native prairie grass. It brings a lot of wonderful texture to the garden, and it's only going to be about 1 to 2 feet tall by 2 to 3 feet wide. Perfect for filling in areas and bringing that sort of airy texture. I can just picture those blooms sort of billowing over your hedges, which look beautiful. It does prefer sunny, dry locations, but it's quite tolerant of a wide range of soils because it does have that really long tap root that'll get down into the soil and be able to sort of fend for itself in the garden. And then next is Nitty Gritty White. This is a very, I think it's like the perfect balance between loose and tame. It's a sprawling type rose. So it does sort of get, 4 feet wide or so by 3 feet tall. And it just blooms and blooms and blooms like crazy all summer long. It's self-cleaning, and that white flower is just gorgeous, but we have many, many colors in this series. Healthy, glossy green foliage. We trial all of our roses extensively throughout the country to test disease pressure mainly. We have a nursery way down in South Georgia where the disease pressure is super high, and these consistently perform really, really well. So a fabulous landscape shrub that's on its own route. So if you're in that zone 4 that gets hit hard in the wintertime, your roses do, everything that's going to come back up from the soil is going to be nitty gritty white. So no need to worry about any of that grafted rose issue. And then next is another coneflower. This one is called Evolution Colorific. I really love this one for a lot of different reasons. One, it's nice and compact, only about 18 inches tall. So again, no staking, no flopping in the garden. It also produces loads and loads of flowers that have this fabulous color display. It opens sort of yellow, and then they move through the spectrum of pinks and salmons, all while this bright green cone sort of is looking right up at you. It's really quite a gorgeous dimension of color. Echinaceas are great for pollen and nectar sources when they're in flower, and their stems over the winter, if you choose not to cut them down, are great for winter nesting habitat for many of our solitary native bees, which is really fabulous. And then lastly is San Antonio Rose Texas Ranger. This is a selection from our nursery friends at Savano in Tucson, Arizona. This is fabulous for those arid landscapes of Texas and the desert Southwest. So those high heat, reflective heat situations, which can be really tough for a lot of plants. This is a beautiful selection, larger bloom, and a more uniform growth habit than other Texas Rangers, all contrasted with this silvery foliage, which I just really love.
Yeah, I love this. Like I said, the contrast of structure, and definition, and then, sort of a looser feel. And when I say structure, Madeline, what does that bring to mind for you in terms of GardenFit?
Posture.
Posture, yeah.
So posture is kind of a hard concept, I think, but certainly in our show, Adam, the co-host and trainer for this season, talked about posture starting from your head. And the way he had us find this is to get your back against a wall or a straight tree trunk, and really feel how your head, the middle of your back, and if you sort of tilt your spine, your hips forward, how you connect and stack your spine when you're in good posture. Of course, the minute you walk away from that wall or tree, you will lose that posture. But if you can remember what we call the inner tree, what good posture feels like, then once you walk away and inevitably bend over or do whatever chores you're doing, in between chores, or when you have a moment to actually just enjoy something in the garden you're looking at, if you remember that inner tree, it will restore that kind of straight structure. And again, that's very relaxing to the body and really healthy to know how to find your inner tree. So enjoy
finding your inner tree. That is going to be a phrase I take away. Well, speaking of trees, You know, we spend a lot of time talking about fantastic shrubs and perennials to refresh your garden space. But there are so many wonderful things happening with trees these days, with new trees, more compact trees, where you can really add more trees to your front yard space. You know, it's no longer you have one statement tree, plunk it down, that's it. I think you have a lot more choices for that matter. And the other area that's, you know, there's a lot of new breeding and new varieties to consider is in ground covers. We were talking about, you know, moving away from the traditional lawn and planting other kinds of grasses and perennials, but also there's so many good ground cover choices, and ground covers are so important in, you know, limiting the amount of, you know, weeds that pop up, and you know, might be great, you know, erosion control. So so I want to talk a bit about that. So let's talk about the plants, and then yeah, I'll come back to Madeline to get some tips with trees and ground covers. Okay, take it away, Georgia.
Okay, so first up, there are two really fabulous new trees for really hot desert climates, which there's not always a lot of new trees in that area. So I was really excited to add these here. The first one is Red Push Pistache. This is a specimen shade tree for the Southwest hot climates. You know, if you're in Phoenix or somewhere like that, this is a fabulous tree for that. The new foliage, which you can see from that photo, emerges red, hence that name, Red Push. And then it turns to this really lush dark green. Provides a really nice big dense canopy, providing a lot of shade in the summer. And then as temps cool in the fall, you get these intense fall colors, reds, oranges, yellows, and it holds on to those colors for longer, which is really fabulous. It also doesn't produce a fruit, so it won't self-seed and it won't make a mess, which makes it a really fabulous choice for lawns or use near a street or a sidewalk, anything like that where you don't want the mess of the fruit. And then next is another fabulous desert tree. This is Leslie Roy mesquite. It's a cross between the hardy native mesquite and the thornless Chilean mesquite. And what that gives us is a thornless tree with a high tolerance to cold for this type of tree, tolerance to cold, and then that blue-green fern-like foliage, which is just beautiful. And you get a nice creamy white flower in the spring as well. And then for those who aren't in this desert high heat climate, Cirrus redbud, the flamethrower, is one of the favorite new trees to hit the market. It's this gorgeous tree with a multi-tone color display. So you get deep burgundy red, amber, bright yellow, and green, oftentimes on the same single branch at one time. It's quite impressive. This is a small tree, so 15-20 feet tall and wide, so great for that smaller, more urban landscape. It's a cultivar of the native eastern redbud, and those are found naturally growing in stream banks all the way to dry rocky ridges. So this is a really adaptable tree and tolerates a lot of different conditions in the garden. And then for ground covers, there are quite a few new ones, but I've chosen three, the first being Spot On Deep Rose. I love Spot On. This is a stone crop, by the way. What makes Spot Ons stand out is their flower power. They produce a ton of flowers throughout the season, and they are much, much larger than the typical stone crop flower. So you get this really lovely low care ground cover, but you also get this beautiful flower display alongside it. And then next is a Wayne Roderick Seaside Daisy. This is a Erigeron. So if you're familiar with Erigeron, it's an evergreen perennial ground cover. It has large lavender blue flowers you can see here in winter to spring. So when not a lot of things are going on in the garden, this is putting on flowers, which is fabulous. It tends to be more heat tolerant than other Erigeron selections, which is great. And the flowers are held higher above the foliage, so they don't get as hidden. A lot of Erigerons will hide their flowers a little bit, and this one will really showcase them. Great for attracting bees and butterflies, and also really tolerant of a lot of different soils, including heavy clay, which can be a challenge. And then lastly is Ocean Sunset Orange Glow, which is a Delosperma. I mean, the color on this is fabulous.
Yeah, it's pretty extraordinary. I mean, it just looks wild.
Yeah, it's really striking. We look at a lot of Delosperma and we don't add a lot of Delosperma to our production because, you know, there's not a lot of variety, but this is really quite unique. This has the largest, most vibrant flowers I've seen on a Delosperma or ice plant. So a high reward for a super, super low effort, if not maybe no effort, ground cover.
That's great. You know, we were talking about ground covers and sort of getting low. And Madeline, I wanted to ask you for tips, you know, when you're down low.
Yes.
What are some things you want to keep in mind? You know, you're weeding or maybe you're planting, but
Exactly. So this is really what part of your body not to use, which is your back.
uh-huh.
So in order to work low to the ground or even get to the ground, we say that everybody should go into the GardenFit squat, which
Uh-huh.
really you can get comfortable doing that. It's a good position to strengthen your body, but it gives you a chance to really lower with your back straight
Mm.
and not hunched. If you're doing a lot of work, for example, if you're digging in a lot of ground covers, it would be best to really go to your knees then softly. And I really recommend a knee pad because our knees are not made to, you know, just twiddle around the ground. But it's really important, even when you're doing that, as you bend, you're bending from your hips when you're working on the ground and you're keeping your back as straight as you can. And that way you really won't stress it and enjoy the process again even more.
Yeah.
So that's careful. And the other thing that I mentioned earlier that you should leave out of the equation is obviously your shoulders. So if you're reaching high to prune a tree, again, please remember to keep your shoulder blades down. Your chest moves up automatically. You don't even have to move it. You can feel that. And then you'll be using your arms instead of, again, overusing your shoulders. So two things to stay out of the equation.
Uh-huh.
Shoulders and hunching backs.
And what about when you are on the ground and you go to get up? I mean, is there a tip about how to get up properly so you're not favoring one side of your body?
Yes, we have a tip for that too.
I knew you would.
Yeah, if you're on your knees and you raise one leg, you know, to begin to get up, obviously, you want to make sure that your body is aligned correctly. So just think about making sure that your toes are facing forward in the same direction as your thigh. So that your hip isn't sticking out, your legs aren't kind of wonky. You're really in a good position to then use both legs. You don't have to have them too separated to actually stand up straight. And I use my glutes to really kind of give myself that extra muscle power to stand up. So it's really important to stay quite aligned when you're coming up from the ground.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move on to containers. We were looking at sort of the larger, you know, beds and borders landscape. Let's talk about summer containers. I think what we've really seen an increase in interest in tropicals that has really taken off. People thinking about that lush, you know, the feeling of wellness in the garden that you get with beautiful tropicals that remind you of maybe a great vacation spot. Also thinking about plants that can really tolerate heat, you know, humidity, drought conditions, and, you know, frankly, low maintenance. You know, when we go on vacation, we don't want to have to worry about our containers. We have a container guide coming out in this week, actually. Maybe I think it's actually coming tomorrow with great ideas, combinations. If you're on our email list, you'll be getting that guide tomorrow. But I wanted to talk about some of your favorite plants, Georgia, that are in the guide, and then get some tips from Madeline on how to really, you know, work with your larger containers.
Yeah, so these are from the guide. The way you look at this, I put them side by side. So the top three are a container. Feels very 4th of July with the red, white, and blue. The first being Sally Fun Deep Ocean Salvia. This is a really bulletproof salvia. If you are new to gardening or you don't like to spend a lot of time fussing over containers, Sally Fun is a fabulous salvia for you. Really minimal care. It just flowers and flowers and flowers through the summer heat with that brilliant bright blue flower and this really light, almost icy blue bud to pair with it. It's really beautiful. And then we've paired it with Angel Wing Senecio. This is another plant that's just going to blaze through the heat with no problem. excellent silvery foliage that pairs really well with the salvia, and then also this hibiscus, which is Jazzy Jewel Ruby. Jazzy Jewel produces large, large, large flowers, and they bloom consistently from top to bottom. So you get a really fabulous display. Also, each individual flower on the Jazzy Jewel is going to hold for 3 days. Traditionally, tropical hibiscus only hold their flowers for about 1 day. And so that trait combined with the flowers from top to bottom really give you this incredible flower display. And then that's all with, this really lovely dark glossy green foliage as the backdrop. And then the second container that I really liked from the container guide is this featuring Lime Passion Cordyline. If you are looking for super bright variegation in your cordyline in the lime and cream theme, Lime Passion is the brightest you can get. It's really fantastic. That color is just unbeatable. It's going to ultimately be about 5 feet tall and wide, so perfect for that upright component of a container. And then we've paired it with the Fiesta Picante Lantana. This is another super bright plant. It's got that electric red flower accented with yellows and orange. The flowers on this are sterile, which helps get us a ton of flower power. The plant is not putting its energy into producing a seed. It is spending all of that energy into just pumping out the blooms all summer long, and it really does. It's a fabulous plant. And then pairing that with Angelina Stonecrop for that bright lime color, again, to pair with the other two with excellent heat and drought tolerance. Also zone 3 hardy, so super low care plant with that Stonecrop.
Yeah, I love the color. That sort of electric yellow is really, really beautiful for summer. So Madeline, when we're planting our containers, what are some great, things to keep in mind about the way that we're moving?
Well, certainly, ideally, you would want to place your containers before you actually begin to plant them and put in, stone drainage and plants. So it's nice to set them up. And I actually also suggest if you can get a pot caddy so you can move it around and take advantage of turning it to the light and keeping it really in the right condition all the time. But I think what's really important about containers is there's a lot of lifting. And again, this is a simple GardenFit idea. Your back should never be in the equation of lifting. So if you squat and put your legs on either side of, let's say, a pot, if you can lean over it, you can lean over it with your back straight from this squat position. And as you go up, it's your legs that are doing the lifting. You can even hold the pot close to your body, which will help carry it once you're tall. And then when you want to put it down, you do the exact same thing in reverse. Really make sure, again, that you're not hunching, that your back muscles are all straight while your legs go into a squat and put it down. But, we talked about this, that lots of people kind of tend to lift things that are maybe a little too heavy. So if you're in that situation where you're not sure you can lift something and you could hurt yourself, this is when you call a friend. And I think you had this idea of maybe instead of a book club, let's have a gardening club. And why not, if you're going to do a pot garden or place pots around your house, do it with a gang and have fun doing that. And then you can switch with each other's garden, because it is really much easier for 2 to carry a pot. But both of you have to be in a squat. You have to be in a balanced position together.
Yeah.
But it really does help. So,
yeah. I like the teamwork idea.
Teamwork, and I love the idea of plants and pots. I think your plants are so beautiful. They're wonderful to feature like that.
Thank you. And yeah, your point about getting into the squat as you're gonna, lift the pot, but setting it down. Sometimes I think we forget about how to move properly when we're actually setting it down, and that's when I know I hunch over, or I, kind of can injure myself.
No, I did that for many, many years.
Well, let's shift gears and talk about color. Peach, we know, is color of the year. From Pantone, they called it color of the year, and we were very excited about that. We grow a lot of peach flowered plants. And one of the things that's wonderful about the color peach is that it's just such a bridge color. I mean, it goes well with everything else in the garden, purples and greens and whites and even reds, which is hard to match with. So Georgia, tell us about a few of your favorite peach colors to get into your gardens, this spring and summer.
Yeah, well, I was gonna only have 3, but we have 6. So. The first is one of our brand new roses. It's called Itsy Bitsy Peach, and it's a miniature rose. So we just talked about containers. This is a fabulous container plant as well. It's only going to be about 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet tall and wide. Very cute, very, very, very floriferous. This seems to always be in bloom. No matter what part of the country we put it in, it bloomed and bloomed and bloomed all summer long. Excellent heat tolerance, excellent mildew and rust resistance, that fabulous peach with orange flowers, really cool tone, nice double, a nice scent as well on these. The flowers are quite large for a mini type. So mini flowers are usually very, very small, but these are about 2 inches and they are quite large and they're self-cleaning. These are also on their own root. I just can't say enough good things about Itsy Bitsy Peach. It's a really fabulous little plant. And then next is Sun Parasol. It's called Giant Peach Sunrise. The flowers on these are gorgeous. Again, a large flower, 5 inches across or so. A nice peach bloom with that bright orange center. And it's just going to pump out the blooms again all summer long. So great in the landscape if you're lucky enough to be in those zones, Katie. Or as
it's actually in my yard right now. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, or a container plant if you are not quite as lucky. A beautiful, vigorous climber. And then next is another coneflower. There's just so much variety in coneflower. So Fresco Apricot is one of the newer ones. Super unique, almost like a zinnia flower is what it looks like to me. And it has these beautiful shades of peaches and pinks. Just a really lovely, lovely new coneflower. And then we have American Pie, Georgia Peach Dianthus. I love this American Pie series. The flowers are quite large and they're held upright on these really strong stems. So great for cutting if that's what you like to do. They also have a wonderful fragrance and a gorgeous silvery sheen to their foliage, which really plays well. That bridge color you were talking about with the peach and the silver is really beautiful. And then another ice plant or Delosperma is Allen's apricot. This is a brand new one. If you're familiar with Mesa Verde, this is sort of the upgrade on Mesa Verde. It's the longest blooming and hardiest Delosperma that's available. And it's in that beautiful peach tone. You've got these large flowers that bloom just literally all summer long in hardy to zone 4. And then lastly is a heuchera. This is not a flower, but it is a foliage. Beautiful color. It's quickly becoming one of my absolute favorite. It's the Sienna Sunrise. It has peachy amber toned foliage that's highly ruffled. And so you end up getting to see a lot of the underside along with it, which is this almost electric pink. So the peach with the pink is just very cool.
Yeah, I love that heuchera, and it just goes with everything, as we talked about. So many of our peach plants are flowering plants, and I know I love to cut. I have a cut flower garden in my backyard, and I love to trim and clip all summer long. Madeline, deadheading tips?
Yes, and the more you deadhead, the more flowers you get. So
Right.
I think it's important to do that a lot. So I have found that if I put 1 foot in the direction I'm bending, Katie, that it is holding my upper torso. Again, I can keep my back easily flat. And then I can use my arms and I sort of rotate my elbows in. So everything's kind of aligned and ready to stretch. And then I clip. And I also make sure that I have a container right next to me. So again, it's very efficient. I just take that fresh flower and stick it in. But with these peach colors, I think you want to really bring the beauty of a garden inside your home. So I suggest, besides the deadheading, to really make sure when they're fresh, to just share some of them from your garden and put them in your house. But always remember to put a foot in the direction you're bending. And I think that will really take a lot of stress off your back.
Yeah. Yeah, not just bending from the waist. That's a really good idea. Okay, we may run a little bit over here as we're going to talk about another trend in colors for summer, and that's what I call the new metallics, gold, silver, white. Gold, not yellow, but more of a gold color can sort of cool down or soften some of the brighter tones in the garden. It makes a really nice companion to a lot of like bright pink. Silver, we've been talking about, various shades of silver, and that also provides kind of a cooling effect, as does white. So those are some of the plant colors that we're especially excited about in terms of refreshing your borders and beds and making it feel like, it really is sort of your garden is kind of keeping up with the trends. Introducing some of these tones in the garden this year would be a fantastic idea. So, Georgia, quickly.
Yeah, so first up, Guatemala Gold. You could pick this up out of a lineup with a million gold and yellow flowering echinacea. You could point to Guatemala Gold. The color is just so dramatic and such a beautiful, true gold tone, and there's tons of them. So a fabulous new echinacea. And then next is Casablanca lantana. We typically see annual type lantanas, but this is a hardy type, hardy all the way down to zone 7 with that beautiful, deep golden flower. So perfect in a zone 7 garden. And then silver, this is our first year growing white sage, which is Salvia apiana, a Southern California plant. Beautiful silvery foliage with a lovely white flower, perfect for pollinators and for gardeners alike. And then next to that is Alexandria brunnera. Brunnera is fabulous for a shade garden, and Alexandria is the brightest silver of them all. So it has less green veining than other varieties. So if you're looking for that true silver, Alexandria would be your best bet. And then lastly, white summer-lasting coconut, crepe myrtle. If you are looking for a unique, small flowering shrub that can blaze through not only heat, but also humidity and pump out the flowers, summer-lasting crepe myrtles are really what you're looking for. These were bred to be much smaller than the trees that you typically think of. So these are going to be about 3 feet tall by 3 feet wide naturally in your garden. And you're going to get early flowers and lots of them. So these are started flowering this week at our nurseries, which is significantly earlier than a lot of the others on the market. And they just pump out the blooms all summer long. And then of course that white flower contrasted with that dark black foliage, fabulous. And then the other white flower is Seaside Serenade Glacier Bay, a super modern take on this sort of cottage garden, old-fashioned plant with that jet black stem and that pure white lace cap flower. It blooms on both old and new wood and is very bushy and very sturdy. So again, no staking, no flopping in the garden.
Well done, Georgia. That was the speed round. Looking at all of these plants, I'm so excited for, everyone as spring really gets going. And I think, Madeline, you and I have spoken about the connection, that we make in our gardens that, isn't just about, as we said at the beginning of the hour, about chores and being productive and, making your garden beautiful to keep up with the neighbors, but other aspects of gardening. And do you want to just, close out with a few thoughts?
Well, just to say that I think, these metallic, the whole idea of white and these shiny plants, it's your opportunity to shine yourself in a garden. So I just encourage everybody to really try to take care of their body while they're taking care of their garden. So it's one effort. It's not a separate effort. We also talked about this, that this is not another thing you do. This is what you do. You use your body just like you're using your plants to really make an experience for yourself. So that's sort of my last thought.
That's lovely. Well, I mentioned that you'll all be receiving a link to our latest container guide to inspire you, hopefully, this spring and summer. And then if you'd like to see more of Madeline, tune in to GardenFit Season 2. It's airing on PBS right now across the country. You can also stream it on pbs.org. You can go to her website. There's a typo there. That's on me. To get more information, follow her on Instagram at GetGardenFit. Thank you, Madeline, so much for being with us. And we just want to wish everyone a happy gardening season.
Sounds great. Just a quick reminder that you will be receiving a link to refer back to today's discussion, and it will also include information on all the plants that Georgia talked about today. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Madeline, Katie, Georgia. Great information.
All right. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.
Thank you.